Let us measure the distance between shores. For if we measure the distance between shores, we may become the wings of blackbirds. Feel the acrid wind release us from the salty mist, the empty rooms of our lighthouse, where we pace the floors.
You know, what drew me and what has drawn me to the poets and the attempt to create a poetic sensibility for the discipline of psychology has been, in some respects, my dissatisfaction with the way in which the discipline of psychology limits itself to a kind of language that has to do with only the sciences.
I was in my early 40s. I started to do yoga and meditate. As they say with yoga, you come for the physical, but you stay for the spiritual. And out of those meditations and out of the yoga practice, started to pour out of me poems daily, writing as if a dam broke.
What can you expect to get out of the webinar? Poetry, psychology, mythology, dream, language. You know, these are things that touch us deeply. And to explore these things is to become more familiar with the topography of your own soul. And what could be more exciting or enthralling than that?
And the quote by Heidegger from Hölderlin, "What are poets for in a destitute time?" suggests to me that we're living in a time of crises where there's a sense of uncanniness about the world and a mood of sorrow, but we respond to the sorrow by becoming repeating what we've done, and we respond to the uncanniness by doubling down and moving forward in the same way that we have been acting.
A significant function of the poem, and by the way I think the dream, is to give us new associations, to bring to us new associations so that we're not doubling down in the same way, that we can begin to see things slightly differently. And I think that that's also the heart of the talking cure, if I might say. You have much more experience than I do. I only know this from an outside view, but when a patient comes in, oftentimes it seems to me, the associations are stuck. You know, when complexes become neuroses, there's this kind of rigidity, there's this thing that is set in. And so to try and free that up and break that up and to create new associations, to look at the world slightly different, to look at your experiences in a slightly different way, whether it was a good experience or a bad experience or a traumatic experience, to begin to work on the margins and to create these new associations, which is, again, to me, what poetry and dreams do. This is where dream and poetry and psychology, to me, have these liminal spaces that overlap.
To make it succinct, I see the poet as hanging out on the margins and lending an ear to what is otherwise unsaid. And that gives us a new way, new associations, a new way of framing. What is our sense of reality and how do we speak about that? So that's what poets for in a destitute time.
And Hillman, I think, was really adamant about not destroying the image. And when the image arises, to not go so quickly into one interpretation of the image where you destroy the other possibilities.
But to stick with the image is to stick with the beauty of another country or a landscape which must be entered into on its own terms.
As both of you are talking, the image that's coming to me is really that of a clearing in which kind of these things come together. You know, language, psychology, and poetry all come together into this place. And it's really, it's like you said, Robert, it's a threshold. It's a place of pure potentiality where anything can happen and in which we are able to, we have the capacity to, maybe for the first time, to discover our relationships with other things that we couldn't see before. That's why it gives us the potentiality to make changes or to achieve transformation.
Our society, our culture presently does not do a good job with ambiguity, right? And so people find that intimidating. Just what you described, Bonnie, can be either exhilarating or it can be actually quite intimidating.
In a culture where people are so afraid, they want certainty. And poetry doesn't give them that. It puts them back on themselves and say, what does this open up for you?
Because a poem really is, and the image, I think, as you were talking about it earlier, Robert, is for contemplation.
Yes.
Right? That's what it's for. But if you're not in a society that values contemplation...
Yeah, a dream is inefficient. I mean, it slows you down. You get up in the morning, and it's not the interpretation that matters so much initially. It's that the dream says to you, hey, wait a minute, look at the world from this point of view. Mm. And if you're in a culture that is driven by fear and efficiency and productivity, most people respond to the dream as, oh, I don't have time. That's wasting time. So,
and it's just a dream.
Yeah, it's just a dream.
To explore these things is to become more familiar with the topography of your own soul. And what could be more exciting or enthralling than that?
But this stuff that Brian and I are doing, that's where my heart really is. I guess my first love is this conversation between psychologist and poet. So what you get out of this webinar is another way of saying and thinking about the world. So the topography of the soul is inscribed in the topography of the world. And we bring a poetic sensibility out of that experience of uncanniness, which means that we speak on the margins, we speak about what is forgotten, we resurrect what is so vital for us to live a fully human life.